Right. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Belfast Garden Club presentation with the RSU 71 School Garden Collaborative. I'm Brenda Harrington, Program Librarian at the Belfast Free Library, and we've been pleased to host the daytime lecture series with the Belfast Garden Club this year, and glad we've been able to do so remotely, and looking forward to the time when we don't have to do it this way any longer, but so far it's been very successful. So thank you all for joining us. Before I turn the mic over to Corliss Davis from the Belfast Garden Club to introduce today's speakers, I want to remind everyone to keep your mics muted, to let you know the program is being recorded and will be available on the library's YouTube channel and the Garden Club website. And also to please, if you have any questions during the program, put them in the chat and we will get to them at the end. Okay, with that, Corliss, take it away.
Okay. Thank you very much, Brenda. We like to always express our gratitude to Brenda and the library for supporting these programs and handling all the registrations and being so competent completely. So before I introduce our speakers, I wanted to turn the camera over to Sally Lewis Lamonica. She's the co-chair of the Garden Club committee that has been working with our programs in the schools, and she wanted to say a few words first. So Sally.
Hi, everybody. It's great to see you. Jane and I have been at this for quite a while, probably longer than we ever anticipated, and we had a difficult time kind of getting traction in terms of how we were going to spend our scholarship money. And we first went through the guidance counselors at the high school, and then we kind of got interested in Unity College. And then with the onset of COVID, we decided that we really wanted something that was totally local. And lo and behold, there was this incredible program going on at Troy Howard Middle School. And we got involved with David, and we historically have given financial support for summer interns. But since then, the program has gotten into more schools in Belfast and East Belfast. And the extraordinary people that are running the gardens are, every one of them is just incredible. And we're so happy to be involved. And we're hoping now that we can get some our garden club members involved. And we're just going to hopefully everything's going to take off from there.
Okay.
And, yeah.
Was that it, Sally? Or? Okay, thank you very much. And before I introduce our speakers, one more thing, I wanted to remind you about the last of the 3 evening programs that the Garden Club has been co-sponsoring with the library, focused on issues of climate change and how it relates to gardens, farms, and forests. And that last evening program is 1 week from today at 6:30. It's going to focus on how climate change impacts forests and how forests slow climate change. And the speakers should be really good. One is the president of the Scudic Institute at Acadia National Park, and the other is the president, is the Forest Program Director for the Nature Conservancy in Maine. So 2 really good speakers, and I encourage you to put that on your calendar for next Tuesday, the 22nd at 6:30. So I will introduce our speakers, and as Brenda mentioned, we'd like you to put your questions in the chat. And when the presentations are over, Susan Kennard, who's the co-chair of the program committee, will be reading back the questions that you've turned in. So in order by presentation, our first speaker is David Wessells, who is pretty well known as the garden coordinator at Troy Howard Middle School in Belfast. He will be followed by Sara Hallam, who is a Food Corps volunteer, service member at East Belfast and Kermit Nickerson elementary schools. Then we will hear from Lindsey Schortz, who is the science teacher and garden coordinator at BCOPE, which is Belfast Community Outreach Program in Education, the high school. And then lastly, we will have Danee Voss, who is the Food Corps service member at Captain Albert Stevens Elementary School in Belfast. So I think I've done everything I needed to do. So let's turn this over to David.
Thanks, Corliss. Thanks, everybody. Okay, let's see if I can do a screen share. Stretching my technological limits here. Okay, can everybody see something?
Yes.
Okay. I was told that people like to see beautiful pictures in these presentations, so I found this one. This is an illustration of what the great Brazilian educational theorist Paulo Freire called the banking system in education. So this is the idea that students are sort of passive vessels for information, and that the teacher's job is to fill their brains with knowledge as they sit there passively. And unfortunately, despite many good critiques of this model and many good alternative models, we have 100 years since John Dewey and Maria Montessori, and this still remains our kind of dominant educational model. And so I wanted to propose an alternative here. This is the picture we want to see. And just a few things to notice in this alternative model. And one is that the kids are outside. Another thing to notice is that they're working collaboratively. They're not competing, they're working together on a project, and they're working on something real. They're not doing abstract work exclusively, they're actually growing carrots in this case. They're also embedded in an ecosystem. So they're embedded in multiple relationships with other humans, other plants, insects, fungi, bacteria, animals. And they're learning from all those things. And their learning is not passive, as it was in the banking concept. They're learning through participation in the world. So the RSU 71 Garden Collaborative formed this year because we have a vision for education that looks more like this than like this. And we got together to really put our heads together and say, how can we build what we have started talking about as an educational ecosystem that can support.
Brian Lamar, report to advisory. Brian Lamar to advisory.
Sorry, guys, I'm at school. I'm hiding out. That can support this kind of learning. What are the kind of preconditions to build this kind of model and bring it to all the schools? So you're going to hear from 5 different schools today. I'm going to talk about Troy Howard Middle School, where I work. And we have a garden project that's been around for 20 years now. We farm about 1/3 of an acre at Troy Howard. We have a year-round greenhouse, so we grow greens year-round. We delivered chard to the co-op this morning. Some of you may have seen it there. And the garden is integrated into our academic work. So math class, social studies, language arts, art class, science class, all take place in the classroom of the garden, the classroom of the greenhouse, and the classroom of the woods. So I'm going to just quickly run through our garden year and just give sort of some impressions of what we do in the short time that I have. So the garden year starts in the fall, or the school year starts in the fall, which is the opposite of the gardening year. So we're really doing a lot of harvesting, and we grow literally a ton of food for the cafeteria every year. You can see kids harvesting carrots and onions here. Carrots are one of our favorite because there's a real magic to the first time you harvest a carrot. You grab the top of a carrot. I still remember the first time I pulled a carrot out of the ground, and you pull it and a carrot pops out. And it's a real hook for kids in the garden. And the most common question I get in the fall is, Mr. Wessells, can I pull a carrot and eat it? And so you have kids walking around everywhere munching carrots, and I never want to say no. So I keep growing more and more carrots, and it's gotten a little out of hand. And then flowers are a huge part of what we do. I was like a very stubborn vegetable farmer. You can't eat flowers. I don't want to grow them. I want to grow food. And I've been gradually won over, and I grow tons of flowers now if you visit the garden in August. And they're great for pollinators, attracting pollinators, for attracting beneficial insects. We make bouquets for the classroom. You see kids here making bouquets, which is such a beautiful way to bring the garden inside the school. And for certain kids, flowers are a real pathway into the garden. The cool thing about the garden is There are so many different ways you can find your way in, whether you're into flowers, or maybe you love bugs, or maybe you love eating and cooking. And there's so many different inroads for different kinds of kids. And then flowers are food for the soul, of course. So beauty is very important in the garden. Here we are pressing cider. We have a small orchard. We press cider every fall. This classroom of kids, the TLC classroom, last year put together what they call the sharing shed. They renovated this old garden shed we had, got a bunch of stuff together, and we started giving away produce at school. And we partnered with Veggies for All, who gleans produce from local Waldo County farms. You see raspberries and apples from Hope Orchard there, tomatoes from Johnny's. At our school, 1 in 5 kids go hungry. And that is consistent across a lot of Maine, that 1 in 5 kids experience hunger. If you look at nutritional security as opposed to food security, so actually whether kids have highly nutritious, healthy food, that number would be a lot higher. And so we're very interested in food security and food sovereignty, and how can we feed our community every day. And I think, it's important to note that hunger is not a function of scarcity. We throw away about 40% of the food that we produce as a culture. So it's really a question of culture and economics, and who we see as worthy of eating. This is dye day. So in the fall, we grow a dye garden every year. And you can see some marigold steeping on the top. Below that is a dye bath made from madder root, which is an old European dye plant. And we also do a lot with indigo, which is just pure magic if you've never dyed with indigo. So kids grow all the plants, they create the dye baths, and then each kid dyes her own bandana. The slides are going slow. There's some of the bandanas that we dye. We use different techniques. Shibori, Jackie Graff from Searsmont is our dye teacher, and we bring her in every year to do these different techniques, really beautiful colors. Seed saving. As the garden winds down, we really get into seed saving. So here we're cutting open tomatoes, squeezing their guts out, and saving seeds from many different heirloom tomatoes, which the kids will study and really dive deeper into the stories of these heirlooms in the winter. So that's wet processing. You have to ferment the tomatoes if you've never done it, in order to remove germination inhibitors from the seeds. And then dry processing. These are broccoli stalks. If you don't eat your broccoli when it's perfect, it'll turn into that, and eventually make seed. And so we then thresh the seeds and winnow them using wind and screens and different techniques to clean the seed. And then in the winter time, we do a lot of work with seeds. So the garden has been put to sleep, but all those different seeds, we have dozens of different varieties. I don't know how many it is anymore, of plants that we maintain. So here we are germination testing our seeds in math class, which involves fractions and percentages, of course. And we germination test all the seed because we have to legally to sell it, but also because it allows us to hit some math standards on the way. Kids do all the artwork for the seed packets, and you can see them packing seeds here. And these seeds are going to the co-op this week. So if you want to try some of the varieties that we love to grow, stop in at the co-op and get some. I tell all the kids, as soon as you become a seed saver, you become a plant breeder, because every time you save seeds, and every 7th grade student becomes a seed saver by the time they graduate 7th grade. But every time you save seeds, you make decisions about which plants you interact with and which you save seeds from. And in doing that, you alter the course of the evolution of that plant. So this is actually a chance cross between a delicata, you guys will probably recognize, a long pie pumpkin, and then on the right is a hybrid between the two, which grew out of our compost pile. And, with our knowledge of genetics, which is another 7th grade standard, we sort of tracked down the parentage. Unfortunately, it wasn't a very good squash, but you never know. Apologize, my computer's going slow with the slides. It doesn't want to advance. Hang on a sec. I'm going to stop the share just to see if I can get my presentation working again. All right, well, I think I might hand it to Sara because my presentation seems to be malfunctioning, and then maybe I'll finish it off if we have time in a little bit. Is that okay, Sara?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
If it starts to work, just let me know and we can. hop
Okay,
on.
I'll let you finish yours and then I'll pop back in if I can. All right, I'm tossing the carrot to Sara.
Okay. Okay. So, my name is Sara Hallam. I work at 2 of our elementary schools in RSU 71, East Belfast, and Nickerson Elementary School. If you haven't been to our schools, I provided some photos. So on the left and on the right are pictures of the East Belfast School Garden just across the bridge in Belfast. And it's been around for a few years now. Before I got to school, the garden space was taken care of by Kayleen Penniman and Jerry Winslow, which are 2 teachers at our school. And so when I joined the team, I kind of joined in with them in taking care of the East Belfast garden. And then Nickerson, and East Belfast is K through 2. Nickerson is grades 3 through 5 out in Swanville. And that is the middle photo on this screen. And this is a picture of me and my students back in the fall. We harvested a bunch of greens and made leafy green bouquets that we brought to the cafeteria and had salad in for lunch that day. Nickerson's garden is brand new. It was built this past summer of 2021 by an Eagle Scout. It was his final project. And so we have a small but mighty garden at Nickerson with 4 raised beds and just getting off of its feet. So I am not employed by RSU 71 or by the schools. I'm employed by Food Corps, which is a nonprofit organization that is a part of the AmeriCorps Service Network, which basically means that Food Corps receives funding from AmeriCorps and other partners that make it possible for me to work at local elementary schools without them having to pay for it. So this year, Food Corps has over 200 service members in the United States, serving at over 13 states plus Washington, DC. So there's a lot of us. In the state of Maine, there's 9 service members, and 2 of them are in Belfast, Danee and I, and you'll hear from Danee after me. And so Food Corps' mission is, together with communities, so in this case with Belfast, to connect students to healthy food in schools. This means that we are working with either hands-on lessons in the garden, in the classroom, being present in the cafeteria and in the kitchen spaces, and promoting a school-wide culture of health. And that mostly looks like forming genuine relationships with our students and with our staff, and caring about our community's well-being and health. Food Corps serves at schools that where 50% or more of the students qualify for free or reduced price lunches. In Maine, now all students qualify, but that is not the case for every state. So that's kind of the factor that determines if Food Corps will serve at a school. And this is just to determine need, so that Food Corps is serving at schools that have students with the most need for food education, for nutrition education, and that just have high levels of food insecurity, and as David said, nutrition insecurity. So East Belfast and Nickerson are first-year schools with Food Corps. Our goal is ideally to have a school stay with Food Corps for maybe 4 to 6 years before they graduate. And in those 4 to 6 years, what we'll be doing is building a garden and nutrition education program at the school. We'll be tending to the garden, fostering a relationship between the outdoor classroom and the students. With my K-2 students, especially in a pandemic, they just have a very interesting perspective on what school looks like. It's really, really abnormal. And so we are in a really unique position to kind of, from a very young age, shape what school looks like for these really young students. And so that's why it's really important for us to have them outside as much as possible, have them doing these hands-on lessons out in the garden. It really is the most precious thing to watch kindergartners plant radish seeds and then watch them grow. And just like a carrot, pull the radish out of the ground. And half of them eat it and think it's gross, and half of them eat it and love it. And just a really special experience that's, I think, foundational to their relationship with the outdoors and their relationship with hands-on learning. So yeah, that's what we'll be doing within the 4 to 6 years, fostering this relationship, building the program, making those connections within the school and within the community, so that by the time the school is ready to graduate, we can bring it to the school board and show, this is all of the work that we've done in the garden and with students over these past few years. This is how the students have grown. This is how it's impacted their educational experience. Please fund a full-time position so that this garden program and the garden educational experience can continue. But East Belfast and Nickerson, it's our first year, so starting small. And next is just, I wanted to touch on some of the things that we do during garden class. So Nickerson planted its very first fall garden this past August. Started a little bit late because I got here a little bit late. But that's all thanks to David for donating some seeds. And my students and I, as soon as possible, just got out there and started planting. And another way that this was possible, we were lugging tools back and forth from East Belfast to Nickerson, which is from Belfast to Swanville, and my car got very, very dirty. But the Belfast Garden Club also made a generous donation of old tools and financially for us to buy new tools at Nickerson, so that those students can have their own tools and materials needed to upkeep our garden. We are currently working on starting a garden fund at both of the schools. It's been a tricky process to get that started, but that's just a way for the garden to be financially independent and can continue to grow and have really unique opportunities that might not otherwise happen. So I've spent a lot of time working with my younger students, my K-2 students. We have talked about plant parts. We've done the plant life cycle. We've talked about what plants need to grow, and we've done lots of experiments with the water cycle and with photosynthesis. Once the ground thaws, we'll do a soil exploration series where we'll focus on decomposers and soil health, compost, all of those things. We learned about germination by doing some of our own germination of native wildflowers. Over the winter, we germinated, I'm gonna mess this up, but I think foxglove beard tongue, bluewood aster, and some common milkweed we germinated over the winter months. Also in the wintertime, it's pretty difficult to be out in the garden space. And so we spend a lot more time focusing on the connections that the garden has to our everyday life. So we're focusing on nutrition and baking and cooking, the importance of locally grown or sourced food, and the value of growing our own food that we can keep and use in the winter months when we don't have a flourishing garden in the cold winter months up here in Maine. And so we've made fruit salad, we've made other types of salads, we've done salad dressing competitions. My favorite is baking with my students. There's one photo of one of my students here shaping a mushroom out of her bread dough that we made together. And so I've baked with my first, second, and third graders. And baking bread with little ones is a really special experience. So that's been a really great connection that we can make in the wintertime to our garden. It also allows us to expand on the curriculum that we're given. I don't have to give tests or exams, or I don't have these very strict deadlines in garden class. And so it's just kind of a time where we can go above and beyond of what the standards or curriculum ask of us. And we make really wonderful connections, but we just do it in different and alternative ways. And lastly, here's just a little photo collage of some of my students and some of the things that we've done this school year. Here, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but this is the Nickerson school garden. Just bright green and beautiful. We were harvesting radishes and we were talking about the parts of a radish. So I was showing students the roots. We grew some corn at East Belfast, did some plant part diagramming, did some work with herbs, and over the winter we dried herbs and then made herbal tea together. This right here, I had garden recess with a few students where during their recess time, they came out and helped me work in the garden. So yeah, just some really special time that goes beyond just garden class. Students want to be out in the garden whenever they're outside and whenever they have the time to. So just always being present and always fostering a space where they can do that has also been really important. So I'll stop sharing. And that's it for East Belfast and Nickerson. Lindsey, I think, unless David, I don't know, did you get your PowerPoint to work?
Let's let everyone else go. And if we have time at the end, I think I've got it working again, but I want to make sure we hear from everyone else. So Lindsey, take it away.
Okay, let's see. Can everyone hear me? The usual. Let me see if I can share my screen. Can you guys see this?
We can.
Oh, why is it not? There we go. Oh, I'm so proud. Hi, I'm Lindsey Schortz. I'm the science and math teacher here at BCOPE, the alternative high school program for RSU 71. And I thought what I would do is just introduce our program, because I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with what we do here. And then I'll run you through a slideshow that I created with my students, kind of highlighting what we all thought were important aspects of our garden program. So it could be quite an adventure. I did proofread though. BCOPE is the alternative high school program here in RSU 71. We've been around for 30 years, which is something in itself when you think about educational initiatives. As my principal likes to say, what educational initiative have you seen that has lasted 30 years and is still successful? I consider myself really fortunate to be teaching here because despite popular opinion, it's not anything goes, but we do have a lot of flexibility and you don't always find that in education. So it's been a really great opportunity to look at science and look at math through different lenses and to really connect with students in ways that they can learn and really to do more individualized programming, which is a lot of fun. So the garden was here when I started 4 years ago. As is the issue with all school gardens, it depends who's here and who wants to take care of it and if people are willing to work through the summer. And it was kind of a dead space that first year. We tried, but I wasn't really involved with it. And then after that first summer, I was talking to students and they really have pride of place. We're really a community here at BCOPE. And and I have one of my students here today, Mia Faye. So everyone else is out in the greenhouse planning, who knows what. But so there's really pride of place here. And so 3 years ago, students approached me and they said, we don't want to do this anymore. It's all dead in the back. It looks terrible. The greenhouse is all overgrown. And so we decided to move forward, to kind of reinvent ourselves and make it work again. So we made the decision to actively rebuild our program, and that involved clearing the garden, tilling, getting the soil healthy again. Really a lot of work went into that fall of 2019, and then the pandemic hit in March 2020. And what was really miraculous is everyone left and no one could be here, and the garden didn't fail. Students were growing seedlings at home. I was driving back and forth delivering lettuce and picking up seedlings that kids had planted. We had volunteers watering. I had 2 guys who came and basically dug up the whole garden for me and helped me get it all planted so that when students returned in the fall, we were all set and ready to go. And we were really fortunate in 2022 because we came back full time, whereas most schools were 2 days a week. We were here 4 days a week and could really get going. So we build momentum every year. We've been really fortunate to have the garden club involved. You guys have given us money for internships and encouraged us and supported us in ways that have really encouraged our students because it made them feel like the community was all involved with our programming. The one thing we were focusing on this year was a series of grants that we wrote, that the students wrote with me. And really our focus, and I'm bringing this up right now, is because David was talking about it. Our focus was on improving our garden's productivity and self-sustainability, but was also addressing food insecurity in Waldo County. And that's been a big push for us as a community here. How do we take care of ourselves? And as an agriculture program, we've been talking about how do we feed ourselves and the world in a responsible manner. So those are a lot of our focuses here at BCOPE this year. So I just thought I'd take you through this slideshow. I think it's a good slideshow, we'll see. And just talk to you a little bit about what you're seeing. And then again, if you have questions, you can ask me at the end or at the end of the program. So this is our greenhouse. We were the first greenhouse in the state to recycle our old greenhouse plastic, as it says there, through a cooperative extension pilot program. And just as it is with every BCOPE project, the day we reskinned the greenhouse, every kid was involved. In the entire community, we had a member of the community, a carpenter. Gary was there helping us, and he also helped us build our squash arch and squash boxes, which was another project with one of my seniors. It was his senior project. He designed that squash arch for us. He did the blueprint, he did the design, and then had his friends help him with the build. You all don't mind if I just take us through, right? I'm Corliss, I'm looking at you for directions. This is okay? Okay. This is just another picture of our greenhouse. It serves really as an extension of my classroom and all the other classrooms as well. And we have kids working in it all the time, designing the planting of it. I'm looking at one of my students nodding his head across the room from me. And like I mentioned before, they're planting Swiss chard in it right now. We have a plan for it this summer. We're going to try and do some of our vegetables that didn't do well. Oh, Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Well, they can read that, right?
Oh, yeah, true, true, true.
So we're going to plant eggplants, and we're going to look at peppers because we don't always do well with them in our garden space. And we're going to try 3 kinds of melon that Fedco so kindly donated to us, and we'll see what happens. This is just a little bit of the work that went into reclaiming our garden space. Students designed that, the pathway up in that far left corner and worked on it. We did a full work day at the school about a year ago just to clean out our spaces. And that's our rototiller, which may be older than our program. And is actually an embarrassment because the carbon footprint don't even get me started on our rototiller. But we are going to a no-till garden, so that should be an improvement for the future. This is just a couple pictures of that first summer and that first spring that we all picked out. This is our Hugelkultur bed. We didn't even know what Hugelkultur was until we realized we had one. It was a place where there was a lot of old compost piled and some big railroad ties had been there. And we have a lot of milkweed that grows there, but this year we had pumpkins and we don't know how, but we had so many pumpkins there. So this year we're going to expand on it, and we're trying to learn more about Hugelkultur. I don't know if any of you know anything about it, and work to expand what we're growing in that bed because it was really surprising and a lot of fun. David, thank you for the Brussels sprouts. This is part of the benefits of being a collaborative. David gave us Brussels sprout seedlings, and this is what we had for Thanksgiving meal. We do a lot of community meals. We're trying to build on more of them here. The other thing is, as you see in the corner, we're reimbursed for produce we sell back to the district. So it's one of the ways that we're starting to explore self-sustainability as a program. And just a picture of, this is one of our goals, is to become more of a market garden. David talked about flowers. We're starting to explore flowers as well. We have about 300 tulips planted on the grounds that we're going to try and harvest and sell in the spring if they grow. We'll see what happens. This is important because this is just really a picture that just shows what BCOPE's about. Our community, everyone is important, and every member of our community makes our garden program successful. So this is 2 of my students, and they're with our custodian, Laurel, who's been here probably 25 years. She loves beets, so we planted beets. She helped us harvest them. She helped us cook them. And really, it takes every member of this community. Gardens, as you all know, are so much work. And if everyone wasn't committed to it, we wouldn't be successful. This is our seedlings that we just started growing our own seedlings last year. We got a COVID emergency grant from Maine Ag in the Classroom, so we had the money to buy all the seed. And then what the beauty of this one, I think, really is all the tables that you see students working on, we built. We had enough money for seedlings, and then we had money to buy a seedling table, but because of the pandemic and I think because of the Suez Canal, we couldn't get the materials we needed. So we had students, the table in that upper left, they had built the year before and painted, but the table on the lower left, one of our students lashed together wood from our grounds and made us a seedling table. So it was actually exciting, and it also speaks to this flexibility and ingenuity, I think, of my students. Creativity. Here's just another picture of some of our harvests, our leeks, our pickles we were making, our melons. We do thrive on community partnerships. The upper right is the garden club. You guys, we had that great donation of books this winter, which we love and we use all the time, so thank you. We also have done some things. There's the bottom right is Hope Orchard, where we help glean for Veggies for All this fall. And then the upper left is Bernie from Full Circle Farm. And he is part of Maine Ag in the Classroom, not helpful, Mikhail. He's part of Full Circle Farm, and he did something about integrated pest management with my students. And the nice thing is he's coming back in the spring, and we're gonna bring the elementary students that we work with at CAS and who we mentor over to be a part of that program. And so Bernie will teach us, and then our students are gonna pass on that knowledge to our student partners from the elementary school. This was our first summer internship program this past summer, and we had 2 BCOPE interns participate. They had a terrific time. To touch on something Sara said, just especially because of the pandemic, social emotional learning is is a word people throw around a lot right now, but the internship program and getting students to be in a safe place in the summer where they can build their confidence, they can build their skills, they can be outside and off their social media, I think is just more important than any kind of, well, I won't get into it, social emotional learning words we can throw around. This was real social emotional learning. It built their confidence. My one student who was there came back to school really a changed person after being an intern for the summer. Don't worry, I don't have very many left. This is just a picture of some of the things we do in our classroom. One is we would build irrigation systems and engineered irrigation systems. Another one is where they were doing edible mixtures and solutions as part of their chemistry curriculum. So we bring it into our science classroom all the time. At the moment, we're talking about PFAS. I'm sure all of you are aware of what a huge problem that is in Maine. We're looking at soil health in our agriculture class and the nutrients that our soil needs. And then we're looking at everything that's happening currently with the PFAS and really looking at the toll that's taking and hoping to talk to farmers involved with it and members of the DEP if we can get them. And really just kind of we're doing a timeline and a current event right now and looking at soil health with what's happening on the ground here in Maine. This slide is important to me. Just a reminder to all of you, our garden serves as a classroom, but it's a lab. It's also a playground and a place of respite for our students. We have students here for all sorts of reasons. It's an alternative to the regular high school. And I think the garden provides a place where they can go, they can learn, but they can also be themselves and be happy and be calm. I personally think every high school should have a huge garden and in an area like this where students can go. One of the nice things my students did this year, they wrote 2 grants. One was the one I talked about earlier, which talked about productivity, and I'm sorry if I'm running over, and self-sustainability. But the other one was to build a pollinator study garden, which will be in front, which will just be plants and chairs and an arbor where they can sit and they can study and they can have a place of calm and be outside. And I would just close, this is one of my favorite images from the garden. This is one of my students 2 years ago. He loved the garden space. He would study here. He didn't just sleep in the wheelbarrow, but he just loved that garden space. And it was a place where he could go for respite and he would come back to class so much stronger and much readier to learn. And I include the Michael Pollan quote because that's someone, we're reading Omnivore's Dilemma right now in all our agriculture classes together. And it's been a revelation for all of us and we're really enjoying it. And that sums up the BCOPE garden program where we are now, but we hope to keep going and continue to be stronger. Thank you all. Go Danee.
Yeah, thank you all. I love listening to everybody's presentations. I think it's really powerful to just see across what we've all done because while we work together, we don't necessarily talk through all of the things that we're working on a daily basis. And so that's really exciting. My presentation is not going to share, you're going to just see my screen. It wants to do this for some reason. I don't know why. I've tried different ways, but my name's Danee. My pronouns are she, her. I operate out of Captain Albert Stevens School at Cass. I work with K through 5 on a bi-weekly basis. And so I work with, I think 16 different classrooms at this point, or 14 to 16, and we do 40-minute garden lessons. I have 3 through 5 one week, and then I have K through 2 the next week. And so I am going to just highlight and break down some of the different projects we've worked on this year, as well as maybe some opportunities for engagement going into the summer. This is just right after we put our garden to bed. This is an image of a zucchini that was harvested. We harvested quite a few too ripe, too large zucchinis, and so they found their way to our cafeteria, where Teresa, our newest food service manager, she turned them into muffins, and we did a taste test with zucchini chocolate chip muffins, and there was some great feedback on that. So like David, in the fall, we have John Thurston who comes out and he donates his time as well as his apple press. And we press apples with 4th and 5th grade. The apples, it was really sweet because the apples were just sort of courtesy of the middle school as well as from like local nature preserves. And so students were able to sort of, I challenged them to go look for the apples that we used out in the different nature preserves. So bringing that classroom element really to that local community, and helping students foster a deeper connection with the land and the place that they live, work, and play. And so yeah, we got to press apples in the fall, which was really, really fun. Next is, I have a background in dietetics, so I have a background in food and nutrition. And so we really prioritize, especially during the winter, cooking in the classroom. And we do this in a couple of different ways. I really want to prioritize and uplift narratives of different food cultures, because learning about different cultures and different peoples and ways of living really can translate well through food. And so I have a couple of images here. The two most prominent ones that I would like to highlight is we did a wild rice dish to highlight Native American dietary practices and culture, as well as that was in tandem with a teacher where they do food, they do like holidays around the world in our 3rd and 2nd grade classrooms. And so we researched, and then students got to participate in learning about some Native holidays. And then with my 5th grade classroom, we explored different ways that green sauces sort of come out throughout the world. And so we made chimichurri, which is based in Argentina. So yeah, it's really fun to cook with students. It's really also chaotic, but I think that's sort of a great opportunity for growth, and also for students to learn and gain responsibility and ownership of the things that they do, both inside the classroom as well as outside in the garden, because they're able to make those connections from the garden space to what we're doing in the classroom in the winter. So we used garlic from the garden space, we used our onions from the garlic space, and they were able to use those in a classroom setting. So really drawing those connections both inside and outside the classroom. This also is followed through with our garden produce. We try to feature as much as we can from the garden. It's not nearly as robust or substantial as like the middle school, but what is there, I think, is really important for students to know. And so when we have our harvest put out into the lunchroom, they use a lot of our onions, the garlic, and then we also had some loose leaf greens from the fall. Next is, we also planted tulips with Johnny seeds, and that was for all of our 2nd grade. And so we're really looking forward for 2nd graders. They remembered it too, which is really exciting. They're like, "This tulips are going to be popping up soon. They're going to be popping up," and they keep running around to go look at them. Actually, this is all of K through 2, and so we planted a lot of tulips in a small amount of space, and we're going to cut them, hopefully, so that they can bring home some cute flowers and make some cards for their family. And if it corresponds with a holiday, that's great, but it doesn't need to, because everyone deserves some flowers. Another area of focus that we have with our grades is with our 3rd grade, we prioritize looking at life cycles and food systems within those life cycles. And so we do this through a number of different ways, but the main area that we focus on is composting, and the area that we're able to focus on within the classroom is worm composting, because they don't have to go outside to be in the cold. And so we're able to really do this in the winter and dive in. We have Jock Roby, who is a phenomenal advocate for worms. And so he comes in and he does a program, and he did a program with each of our 3rd grade classrooms. They all have their own worm bins to take care of, and they feed them on a weekly basis. And it's really fun because they're like, wow, we have 100 new pets in our class. And a lot of them want to volunteer to take them home in the summer. And so that will be interesting, to say the least. Moving on is, so I operate within the classroom, but also I really want to find ways for students to engage with the garden outside of the classroom setting, especially because this is their space and this is their land to really grow and learn from. And so one way that we do that is through Garden Committee, which is a student-led service project. They wanted to paint picnic benches. Unfortunately, we do not want to paint the picnic benches. So we landed on a mural instead. And so students have been and continue to redesign what we want our welcome to sign to look like. And then we will use our budget to create a new garden sign, and students have been drawing out ideas. We have Title I helping with this. So Lisa Britta has been a great advocate and support system for students to explore how can we make a really beautiful welcome sign. And then I have a couple more, but we've also been working on grants this year. I did have a 4th grade class help write grants, which was really exciting. But outside of that, we noticed that from our produce outside to coming inside the classroom, we didn't have the proper storage nor the equipment to really be able to transport all of our cooking equipment in and out of classroom spaces in an adequate time frame. I'm jumping from classes with like 5-minute transition time. So we received a grant from the Maine Environmental Education Association to build out a cooking cart, and it's fully mobile. It has a ton of really great stuff in it, and I'm excited to use it with students next week, hopefully making pancakes and maybe with some maple syrup. And then we've been focusing on maple syruping. I have a really big background in this. I spent my college learning how to syrup from monks. Whole process, not a backstory to get into, but we've been tapping trees. So we did that all of last week with 3 through 5, and we're going to, it's already a lot of saps coming in. So we're exploring different ways that we can cook down the sap, and hopefully we'll be able to have some homemade maple syrup with the pancakes that we make next week. And I'm going to round it out pretty quick here with some of our additional projects that we're working on, which is through Bake for Good, baking loaves of bread. So students will be able to do that next week. The student-led grant project that I had my 4th graders work on with me was through BRR, which is like the Belfast Reduce, Reuse, Recycle committee that Kathy and a couple other special education teachers operate within. And so students determined that we needed new compost bins. And so they helped to write a grant, and we were fully funded for it. So we'll be building out compost bins with our 4th grade class. Title I received a grant to build out a book garden, which will be next to our hoop house. And lastly is that we always do a community meal. And so that's something that we are in the works for at the moment. Quickly, with my last minute, is that some ways that the Belfast Garden Club can continue to provide support for our wonderful, wonderful program that, like, we're in our 4th year. It's really starting to transform into something that seems sustainable, is summer maintenance, seed donations, maybe wood chip and compost donations, and completing the book garden, because that's something that will probably happen outside of student and school hours. And then I also put my contact information, and I can put that in the chat as well. But yeah, I went over a lot of information very quickly. So thank you all for staying with me. And hopefully we have some time to hear the last bit of David's presentation and answer any or all of your questions. I can answer that question really quick. A book garden is so students in their classrooms are going to pick out different books that have plants that are featured in them. So for example, like Harry Potter, right? 5th graders might love to read Harry Potter, and in the books, in the Harry Potter series, there's a number of real plants that exist. And so we're going to be creating a list of those and then planting them out in the garden space next to QR codes, and that will bring them to the book in the library. So they'll be able to look at a plant, learn about the plant physically, and then also be able to read about it in a very fictional and fun sense.
Cool. I have more presentation, but I thought maybe we should just take the time to answer some questions. I see a bunch of questions in the chat, and I don't mind going over time a little bit, if that's okay, Brenda. Feel free to drop off if people
we can go over.
It's fine. That's fine,
Yeah.
David. Go ahead.
maybe 10 minutes, and
We can go over like till 10 after or so.
Okay, cool. I saw a question in there about nutritional
David, hold on. Why
security.
don't you let Susan read the questions, and because
Okay, sure.
variety of people. Thanks.
If that's okay. So, so first off, you can all hear me okay?
Yep.
Yep, okay. So first off, there were some kudos to David, and I mentioned that the Troy Howard Middle School chart is great, which is true. It disappears very rapidly from the co-op, and we all love it. Uh, Corliss wanted to know what variety of carrots you had out there, David, in such huge volume.
Oh man, I really like Scarlet Nantes, however people say it. But we also grew Bolero last year, which is a hybrid that I got from Johnny's. And then we always grow a bunch of other ones. So I'm not quite sure.
They look beautiful in uniform, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And those are storage carrots, I know, because I just ordered some seeds too for both.
Yeah.
Yep. Great. Thank you.
So, so also, David, could you explain a little bit why you need to ferment tomato seeds
Oh
for
yeah.
them to germinate?
So this is true of a lot of seeds that are in fruits, that they have a natural germination inhibitor system. They have natural germination inhibitors on the seeds, so that they don't drop and start growing right away. And some of them are designed to go through the digestive system of an animal before they germinate. And other ones just essentially have a delay, so they have to be in the soil, weathered and rotting a little while. So what we do is we put them in a jar with water and let them ferment for 3 or 4 days. And the bacteria actually eat those germination inhibitors off the seeds and prime them for germination. And it also does a good job of getting rid of any disease that may be trying to, ride over on the seed to the next year. So it's pretty simple, and you can save a tremendous amount of tomato seeds, just from a handful of tomatoes.
Great, thank you.
Same with cucumbers. We do the same thing.
I actually wanted to mention something myself before I forget, and you brought up Hugelkultur, and we did have a program on that on January 18th, which is on the Library and Garden Club YouTube channels. So if any of you want your students to learn more about it, this program by Teddy Matson, I think you will find is very interesting. So this was a question for David, Sara, or Lindsey. Can you comment a bit more on the nutritional security focus of the culinary portion of your food program? Sounds like it goes significantly beyond food security.
Yeah, I can talk about that a little. Actually, maybe I can share a photo from the presentation. Oh, whoops. Okay, we won't do that. But yeah, so my summer program, cooking is a huge part of it. And you saw in Lindsey's presentation a photo of her interns from BCOPE who came and helped cook for my middle school summer program in the summer. So one of the things I loved about seeing all those presentations was all the little tie-ins, the little looping things that happen between our gardens and the community and Veggies for All. And because that's how we build food security, is by kind of knitting these different parts of community back together. But we cook with middle school kids right out of the garden. They harvest their veggies, they cook their lunch. Lindsey was our fearless chef last summer. I asked Lindsey if she would cook outside on a propane burner in an oven made of mud with whatever we grew, and like $25 to feed 30 kids is how we do it. She said, sure, I'll do that. And so under a tarp. And so we cook like incredible gourmet food with next to nothing except for what grows in the garden. Pizzas in the wood-fired oven. We made falafel and fresh pitas last year. And so it's very simple. We grow food together, we prepare it together, and we eat it together. It's very simple, but it's something we don't do enough. And I think that there's an element of it that's remembering that element of our culture, that aspect of our culture that we used to do every day. You feed people is what we do as humans, that we've just gotten away from. So it's a remembering thing for me. don't know if Lindsey or Danee or Sara want to add anything.
I mean, I would just add that one of the things, it's been interesting. I mean, I've read Omnivore's Dilemma many times. We're reading it with a group of high school students and talking about aspects of things like cultures and what they eat, their cultural history and what they eat, and America's food culture, which is pretty non-existent. And the fact just about community meals and how do people eat? Do they sit down and eat as a family? And just having a show of hands, who sits down and eats as a family? And it's 2 out of 10, which always astounds me. So yeah, I think it does significantly go beyond food insecurity in this community and probably beyond. And I think one of the nice things about the school gardens is we do create these opportunities for community meals and for people to cook together, and the tie-in with BCOPE to have that culinary program that's tied into our garden just makes the experience more meaningful. And again, as David said, just building these, even if you're building these traditions within our BCOPE community, it might be something that they're taking out to their family and beyond, and just cooking in the summer in the garden, and we all sit down together too and eat at the same time at this long table. And it's one of the most, I would encourage any of you to stop by. It's one of the most wonderful experiences to sit down at a table with 30 students, you know, with a meal that they've cooked and harvested themselves.
Fantastic. So there's a question here from Barb Gage. Will you be bringing plants to the plant sale again this year? BCOPE's offerings were well loved by buyers last year. We would love to have a table representing the whole collaborative this year.
Well, I would like to, Barb, depending, every year I'm kind of a wish and a prayer that my seedlings grow here. So yes, if we have seedlings, we would love to contribute. That was a lot of fun for us, and we enjoyed all the aspects, but making our signage, doing all of that kind of thing. And I have a van this year, so I could collect seedlings from everybody if they have them and bring them down if people have available ones. But we would love to contribute. I think I can speak for all of us. You guys can shake your heads yes or no, but that we would love to contribute.
So here's a question from Wendy. Does every elementary school in RSU 71 have a garden? And I would add, and if not, are there plans to expand the program? It's for any one of you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh,
Dan. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, I'm pretty confident, yes. I mean, we just expanded to East and Nickerson this year, but Cass has had our garden for 4 years, and it is what Sara was talking about prior to this, that we will be expanding into having a full-time position, at least at Cass, within the next 2 to 3 years. That's a reality that can come to fruition, and continuing to have a food corps service member operate out of the other schools until we can either cultivate one big position, which is a big undertaking, or have 2 really great staff members to work in each of those schools.
Thanks. David, did you have something too, or no?
I was just going to say that, you know, most of these small elementary school gardens, it's really remarkable what these guys have done, because their budget is $0. A lot of them have no staff member time dedicated to them. So, you know, when you see what Lindsey's done at BCOPE or what Danee and Sara have done at the elementary schools, they're doing this. They're making something out of nothing. You know, they don't have money. They don't have, and I know Lindsey's in all summer volunteering time. And so it's really important to recognize how much work is going in and kind of magic is going into making these gardens happen. And if anyone feels like supporting them ever, you know, financially with volunteer time, it really does go a long way. And, you know, let the administration know at our schools and our school board that you appreciate these things, because that administrative support goes a long way too.
So this is a rather long question comment. I think it's from Sally, that there's an upcoming WCB. Is that Waldo County Bounty or what? Yeah, there's an upcoming Waldo County Bounty panel on PFAS, and the Zoom link is in the chat in case you all are interested. It is on March 23rd from 4 to 5 p.m. and a long list in the chat also of the panel of guests, which includes some names I recognize, including Rick Kersbergen from Cooperative Extension and someone from Maine Farmland Trust and some Songbird Farm, Defend Our Health. So quite a long list of panelists, but that might be something that your students would be interested in and that you might be interested in.
I would be, if I can add something, Susan, it was, Sally, thanks, because one of the way I introduced PFAs actually is we listened to an NPR broadcast from Songbird with the interview with the people from Songbird Farm. And it was a pretty powerful way to introduce the topic. So we listened to the interview and read the article along with it. It was very good. So thank you for that tip.
And then there's a question, can you provide contact info at each school for volunteer time? I presume you folks are the contacts?
Yeah, we've popped in. Danee, and I think David have put our contact info in the chat.
And I'm sure you would welcome all the volunteers you can get.
Yeah, especially Danee and I, who our service term ends July 1st. So July and August, there's not really anyone there to tend to the gardens. So that's a space where Danee and I will be looking for volunteers to help with that. Also, I wanted to say back to the elementary school, does every elementary school have a school garden? And Wendy made the comment of Ames and Weymouth Elementary weren't mentioned. I don't know if Ames or Weymouth have a school garden. Lindsey or David, do you know if they do?
I don't think so. Ames sometimes has some stuff going on, but I don't think either of those have a real active school garden right now.
Yeah, I think the intention is when there is a full-time position hired at East Belfast and Nickerson and or at Cass, that they would expand to the other elementary schools in the district to either start gardens or coordinate some sort of like garden field trip thing for them to like build that into their curriculum too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, traditionally before COVID, the Ames students, the second graders, would come on 3 field trips to Troy Howard and would start their own seedlings there and take care of them and then bring them back and have a plant sale. So our real intention with starting this collaborative was that we felt like we needed more resource sharing, money sharing, tool sharing in order to build enough momentum that those littler schools with no money for gardens could get going more easily. And that when people like Sara and Danee arrive, they have the resources they need to make something happen in the short time they're here.
Okay, I'm going to ask you one more question, and this is from Pat Blakesley. She's asking what else the Garden Club can do to help you guys, and also wanted me to mention that we'll be sending a survey to club members to see what the level of interest is within the Garden Club. So what do you need most from us?
I think it's a hard one for me to answer. I think what I need, I think each of us has different needs. I know that for me, being a full-time teacher and coordinating the garden is a lot. So sometimes I feel like I hesitate to get, or I don't have the time to really figure out what volunteers could do. And it's almost, I'm sure all of you have been in this predicament. It's almost easier to do it yourself than to figure out how to get organized because there's so much on your plate. But I think in terms for me, just people, if I could coordinate a schedule of people who would be willing to come weed in the summer, that would be amazingly helpful. I mean, I go in and water and I weed, but first of all, I'm a horrible weeder. But just if I could have people who would come in maybe once a week to do something like that, I could coordinate a schedule for that. I think it's been very helpful. People, have information or especially that they want to share with my students. That's really helpful. Sally just sharing that Waldo County Bounty link or times that there's information. For me, that's wonderful to have those resources. I don't know what everyone else thinks, but you can all
Yeah, I would echo that. I would just
Yeah.
say creating a schedule for summer volunteers is going to be the most helpful for my two schools at least. And I know that Sally and Jane have also come up with a few ideas that we've been emailing back and forth about that go beyond just like volunteering and garden maintenance. So I can't really speak to exactly what those look like, but there's definitely ideas being shared and talked about. But I think as we're approaching the summer, just having.
Okay, great. Yeah. Great. I'm going to have to cut us off now, I think, because we have to go on to our regular garden club meeting here in a few minutes. But I really want to thank you all. It was a wonderful program, and
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
I've spent a lot of time at Troy Howard, but it's really good to see all the great stuff that's going on at all the other gardens, and it's just fantastic for the students, I'm sure. So, and thanks all of you for your great presentations. Enjoyed it immensely.
You're doing